All right, now time for 6 points with Yahoo Sports fantasy football expert Joel Smyth. Joel, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I don't know if I classify myself as an expert, but I'll take it.
I feel the same way. Anytime someone says NBA expert, I'm like, I'm not an expert. I'm just an analyst. but you are definitely one of the people with the most expertise covering fantasy football right now. So I appreciate you joining me today, Joel. Let's start off with number one from the weekend. Lamar Jackson injured, likely out multiple weeks now. The Ravens also lose that game. They fall to 1-3 at this point. From a non-fantasy standpoint, just to start off here, how much trouble are the Ravens in at this point? Because Lamar's hurt. They've got a ton of injuries on defense. It feels like danger zone here for Baltimore.
Yeah. I am worried, even for Lamar, it being a hamstring injury is really tough, because if you have a hamstring injury for like Matthew Stafford, it's not as big of a deal, but obviously it affects Lamar a little bit more. So that bye week does help him out. So they'll have 2 weeks where he'll probably sit out, and then they'll have the bye. So I'm guessing he'll come back after that. And the division's definitely helping him out. The Browns and Bengals aren't doing too much. I don't really have too much faith in the Steelers. They'll probably do their normal 9-8 season is what I would guess. But I still have faith in the Ravens making the playoffs, at least, maybe not being that number one seed, obviously, this year. But I'm not too panicked yet.
I mean, look, I think with Lamar, the injury, concerning, obviously, but also the performance in that game. He had the interception, bonehead decision. He had the fumble. And this is now 3 years in a row in big games. The 2023 AFC Championship game against the Chiefs, he had an interception, had a fumble. The 2024 AFC Divisional game against the Bills, he had an interception, he had a fumble. And then last week against the Chiefs, he has an interception, he has a fumble. And with Lamar Jackson, I've been very open on this podcast about how this is my first year really getting back into the NFL, watching 9 hours every single Sunday. But I have watched the playoffs over the last handful of years. And for me, in my eyes, I've watched Lamar Jackson choke away some of these games. And this is after regular seasons in which he was dominant. I did not watch regular seasons closely at all, but he has choked and had some really underwhelming postseason performances. And I can't help but wonder, is Lamar Jackson just a big game choker with some of these games that he has? It feels like a trend to me, Joel. Tell me, am I wrong here? Because I feel like everybody says, no. That's not the case. Like Ben Solak, I had him on before the season. He's like, no, I still believe in Lamar. Feels like there's a lot of belief in Lamar, but I'm just seeing what I'm seeing. And I'm seeing, silly decisions in big moments against the best teams and a lot of carelessness in these games, which is different than what you see with 40-plus touchdowns and 4 interceptions last year. It's just dramatically different. So tell me, what's the truth for Lamar? Is he a big game choker?
I would say it's somewhere in the middle. I definitely wouldn't say he's a big game choker, because even we look at Buffalo a couple weeks ago, they put up 40 points. I don't really blame that game on him. Baltimore's defense is 32nd in the NFL right now, so I don't think that helps them for sure. In some of those big games, they are against really good defenses, especially the coaching in Kansas City. So we go back to that defense in 2023. That's a really tough defense to go against. So yeah, he had those turnovers. You don't want to see that, especially from that MVP level quarterback. But I wouldn't fully put the blame on Lamar. And he's also had that playoff games where he has stepped up. And I think he's kind of broken that narrative a little bit, because he didn't have a playoff win for a while. Now he at least has a few under his belt to help him out a little bit. So I don't think it's fully on him. I just think he hasn't really risen to the occasion to the full extent like some of these other guys. We've seen that playoff run from Burrow. We've seen it multiple times from Patrick Mahomes. But a lot of these other quarterbacks, we haven't really seen it. Even Josh Allen to an extent hasn't made the Super Bowl yet. Justin Herbert hasn't made it all the way through that. So I think Lamar Jackson, he has a little bit more pressure given that he's been the multi-time MVP. But I wouldn't fully put the blame on him here.
I think it's fair. I think we've also seen throughout history playoff chokers. Peyton Manning at one point was a choker, and then he wins. Alex Rodriguez in baseball was a choker, and then he has a dominant run to the World Series with the Yankees, and it was really one of his only great postseasons for what it's worth, but he did win a World Series. So we've seen these guys across sports that are quote unquote chokers, and then they win. And so I think there's still a chance of that with Lamar, but the hamstring injury, the amount of injuries that this team has overall on their roster, and the fact that it's a hammy as well is concerning. So pivoting to fantasy football here, with Lamar's absence, how do you expect this to impact, Flowers offensively, Henry in the backfield as well? Because I would imagine from my perspective that it's going to hurt in the short term, but if I have these guys on my team, I'm thinking more about selling, considering the concern about re-injury to Lamar's hamstring, that their value significantly drops. Would it be a panic decision for me if I have Henry or Flowers on my team to try to trade them now? Or do you think that could indeed be actually a wise decision in the long term?
I actually would agree with you in terms, I don't think it's panic. For 4 games into the season, we actually kind of have pretty strong correlation in terms of how the season is going to go. If your guy has not performed for 4 straight weeks, there's not as much of a chance. Where in week 1, we're like, hey, it's not that big of a deal. Let's calm down. But at this point, if you are 1-3, 0-4, even 2-2 for some teams, I would be more on the sell side. If you're winning, I don't mind buying. But I do think it affects this team a lot. I think Lamar Jackson, people don't fully get how much he affects this running game for the running back. So a stat that I love saying, the past 6 years, who has led the NFL in yards per carry 4 times? It's not Derrick Henry. It's the Baltimore running back. Whoever's the starting running back for Baltimore for the last 6 seasons. So Derrick Henry last year, yeah, but J.K. Dobbins, Mark Ingram, those type of guys where they're not the number 1 running back in the NFL, but they do it because of Lamar Jackson. He causes so much attention to be focused on him in that read option game, those design runs, where it opens up these lanes and that efficiency just skyrockets, but he's also not taking those going attempts. So we get that with a Jalen Hurts, but he also has taken 10 goal line sneak touchdowns a year for the past few years. With Lamar, we don't really see that. So that efficiency blows up, and then they get down to the 5-yard line in this incredible offense, and they just hand it off to Derrick Henry every time. So that's the big worry, is this offensive line, too, isn't as great. So they have been helped out by Lamar Jackson. They're still first in yards before contact, but that is a Lamar Jackson stat. When we're actually looking at run block win rate, there's that stat. They were number 3 last year, but there was a bunch of offensive line changes this offseason for Baltimore. They're 14th. So it's not bad, but it's not elite anymore like it was last year. So then we add in Cooper Rush, and then what happens there with this rushing attack? So maybe a little bit more volume, hopefully, at least compared to what we've seen this year for Derrick Henry. But this defense isn't helping him out in terms of those game scripts and getting a bunch of carries in that second half. And Cooper Rush, how much is that efficiency going to fall off, both the offense, but also this rushing attack? That's the main worry for me.
All right, number 2 question here of our 6 points here, Joel. Ties. 40-40 game between the Cowboys and the Packers. Why do we only have 10-minute quarters of these new rules, Joel? I don't get it. We should go to 15 or have sudden death. I just felt like I got blue balled in that game. It was an awesome game, and we ended in a tie. I stayed up late for that one, man. Come on.
Totally. The 40-40, I was thinking of the exact same thing. I feel blue balled after going 40-40, and we don't get to the end of that game with the actual decision. So the tie is, I don't know how much you watch college football. I think this is the 1 or 2 things where college football does a lot better. Overall, I'd say the NFL is a better product, but the overtime in college football is so good, in my opinion. At least how it used to be in terms of just every possession being from the 25. I don't know if I like the 2-point conversion thing, but 10 minutes too. If they're going to give both teams possession, why are we only making it 10 minutes instead of, if anything, making it longer if we're going to get both teams possession? They're asking for ties at that point.
Oh, related to this game, the Packers in this game, they tie 40-40. They're now 2-1-1 on the season after losing week 3 to Cleveland. Pretty disgusting loss, and then they tied to Dallas. No Tech Ben over on X. My friend Ben Thompson runs the best tech blog out there, Stratechery. He's very level-headed when it comes to tech, but he is unhinged when it comes to the Milwaukee Bucks and the Green Bay Packers. And he posted a tweet saying, just utterly unacceptable from Matt LaFleur. Atrocious. Didn't go for it at midfield. Risked it with 15 seconds left in the half. Horrible conservative play calling. Awful time management at end. Special teams sucked. I'm out. And I quoted that, and I said, all true. It didn't go for the win at the end of the fourth quarter. Hard to view the Packers as a serious contender with LaFleur as head coach. And the replies I got to that were interesting. On one hand, there were people saying, stick to basketball. There were other people saying, you're overreacting here to one game. The Packers offense would be nowhere near as good as it is without LaFleur. And then there were a lot of Packers fans saying, you're right. He is the guy holding us back from reaching our true potential. One of the replies was like, why are we not unleashing Matthew Golden even more? Like there was like some replies like that saying, people talk about the offense. We can do more with Golden was one of the responses. So where do you align with Matt LaFleur here with his impact on the Packers? Am I in the right? Is Ben Thompson in the right to be overly critical, or do you tend to side on the end of, no, he's good, let's just chill here?
I'm overall pro Matt LaFleur.
Okay.
I think it is very real, especially like you tell you, this wasn't just that one game in terms of play calling. So I get it from Packers fans, like this has happened multiple times, and it was pretty bad, like in terms of their conservative play calling. It's like awful. No one wants that 40-40 tie, but they like wasted a lot of time. But with that being said, he is so good at so many other things, and there's no perfect coach in the NFL. And he's still like somewhat young, you know, but also like the coaches in the NFL, like even the best of the best have had bad moments. And when we're talking about Super Bowl success, not to go back to college football, but it's kind of the thing, like they can't do it until they do. Like the last 5 years, we've seen it multiple times. Like Kirby Smart couldn't do it. Jim Harbaugh couldn't do it. Ryan Day couldn't do it. And then they did it and everyone stops talking about it. And I can kind of predict that with Matt LaFleur because he's so good at so many different areas. They've been to the playoffs 5 times since he's been hired in 2019. So 6 seasons. He's been to the playoffs 5 times. Since that span, only 3 other coaches have done that with the team. Andy Reid, John Harbaugh, and then Sean McDermott in Buffalo. So it's like the company that he's in, like it's hard to complain. And they have a great team, but I also wouldn't say it's a super team. Like the defense after the first 2 weeks looked incredible. Everyone kind of had them as those Super Bowl favorites after 2 weeks. But the fact of the matter is those pass catchers, I would say, are below average in terms of a full group. The offensive line is definitely below average, leaning toward bad. So there's definitely some flaws in this, what is overall a great team. And Matthew Golden, I have some other opinions, but yeah.
With Matthew Golden, what are those other opinions?
Yeah, well, I think it's hard to ask too much of a rookie, especially like him. And I get he was a first-round pick. They want to use him more. But he has been playing. So I don't think it's one of those things like Travion Henderson in New England. I understand that more, the complaints about it, because he's not on the field a lot. Golden is still playing a lot. He's just not getting the targets, which a lot of that does fall on receivers. And that was kind of one of his weaknesses in college. So I don't think it's more of a coaching thing. Like you can try to get him more involved in areas, but he's 4 games into his career. He's playing a lot. Like I think that more falls on Golden than coaching right now.
All right, number 3, A.J. Brown. He's definitely not happy. It feels like he's on the verge of a total meltdown here, even though the Eagles are 4-0 and they have a chance to defend and go win another Super Bowl. A.J. Brown, not happy because currently he's on pace for only 59 catches, 642 yards, and 4 touchdowns if he plays all 17 games this year with the Eagles, because it has been a really strange start to the year for him. Aside from one big game, it's been 3 games where he's been a non-factor. What's the deal with A.J. Brown, Joel? Is he in the right to be feeling a certain way about this, or do you see a light at the end of the tunnel for him?
It is strange. That is the perfect word for it, I would say. So anytime that I look into these type of stats, especially the player struggling, like I want to go watch it too. So I went and watched his whole week 4. And it's interesting because, like, you know, I think he kind of has the right to complain about some things, but the targets are there, even in the low passing offense. Because I think people are like, oh, they're not passing the ball. That's why he's not doing well. Week 1, yeah. He is top 10 in target share. He has 8 targets in 3 straight games. So what's wrong? The offense is the main thing. It's a lot different this year. They obviously lost their offense coordinator, and A.J. Brown right now, he's getting less work in the slot in general. Like he's playing basically more outside than anybody in the NFL. Like he's pretty one-dimensional right now in this offense, and their play action has dropped a decent bit. Their motion has dropped a little bit as well, and the running game isn't as strong. So I feel like that all kind of comes together, and forms a lot of different problems. When they don't have that super strong running attack and they're running less play action off on top of it, they're not really throwing him screens. They threw him his first one last week and it went for -2 yards. And everything else is just pretty stale. So his catch rate in 2024, how many times he was catching the ball when he was targeted? Was that 70%? That's pretty good. Hurts is pretty accurate. This year it's down to 52%. And it's not a huge drop off in terms of Hurts. It's more just when he's being targeted. So we had 8 or 9 targets last week. I looked at every single one. There wasn't one where it was like easy catch that didn't happen in terms of a missed throw or a drop or whatever. Like it was contested targets downfield where it kind of seemed like they were just forcing him the ball. It wasn't very efficient. It's a lot of hitch routes on the outside and deep balls, and nothing is just easy for him. So it's kind of like I compare it to Marvin Harrison in Arizona or like George Pickens in Pittsburgh last year. It's kind of what it was looking like compared to how it was for A.J. Brown last year. So I have hope in things changing. Like we saw that week 3, it can work in those big games, but I think he's just going to be a lot more boom bust this year, which is tough for your second round pick.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, for a second round pick. So in other words, it feels like you're saying if you still have him on your team and if there's somebody in your league that wants to pay what feels like fair value for him, you're selling A.J. Brown.
I would lean that way for sure. I just don't love having players in fantasy that kill your week. Like Yahoo posts that social media graphic every week of like, hey, here's the number one guy in the week that lost you your week if you played him. It's like David Montgomery scoring 1 point this week. And I feel like A.J. Brown is going to be on that a lot this year. It can be on the opposite end and win you a decent amount, but I feel like there's going to be some more weeks ahead that are like this.
Yeah, I did not draft him. I had the 12th pick in my keeper league, and I was like, I'm not taking him at the swing. Just feels like too volatile of a situation, and even more volatile than I expected. And for the Eagles, it's just kind of funny. Like you win a Super Bowl, you're 4-0, you're undefeated right now. It feels like in some ways this team has a real chance to win it all again. And yet you have your receiver, your star receiver, posting cryptic messages.
Yeah, they're 4-0. It's actually crazy. Yeah. Yeah, it's a situation where like, not that it could only go down, but it can only go down if the volume stays the same. He was number 1 in efficiency last year. I think he was the wide receiver 12 in fantasy just because that volume is lower. So that was the hope this year was like, oh, can his volume increase and that efficiency stay number 1? And it's actually been the opposite. The volume is still really low as a team, and that efficiency has just plummeted for all the following reasons that I said.
All right, number 4, Tyreek Hill suffered a traumatic major knee injury, dislocated knee, torn ACL, et cetera, et cetera. So he's out for the year. This could also change the trajectory of his entire career. Tell me from a fantasy perspective, Joel, can you rank the Dolphins fantasy beneficiaries? Like who's going to benefit the most here with the Tyreek Hill absence?
Yeah, I think number 1 is clear. The other ones are a little bit more interesting. Number 1, I would say Jalen Waddle. We don't have much in terms of him playing without Tyreek Hill outside of his rookie year, which he was incredible as a rookie. But there is one game, it was in the fantasy playoffs in 2023, I believe the first round. He had 8 receptions, 142 yards, and a touchdown in the one game without Tyreek Hill since he was traded to Miami. So that is obviously a really good sign. When he's just playing on the field without Tyreek Hill in the games where they're both in there, but Tyreek Hill's on the sideline on a passing play, that target share has jumped up 8%. So it's about 20% with him on the field, 28% without. That would equal about 8 targets a game. That would be plenty for Waddle. The big thing is just his efficiency. When Tyreek Hill is not out there, he has a 2.8 yards per route. That would be number 4 in the NFL this year, behind Puka, JSN, and Tyreek Hill. So basically number 3 in a way. So overall, I'd say he's the number 1 benefactor.
Okay, so Waddle number 1. What about behind him? We see Darren Waller play his first game of the season. He had a big week. Malik Washington seems to be a very popular waiver target this week. Do you expect is it murky with those guys, or do you have any level of confidence in who's like second behind Waddle?
Yeah, murky is definitely the right word. I wouldn't say confidence is the word that I'm preaching, but I would go Malik Washington. Darren Waller, I don't want to put my faith in a 33-year-old tight end that's just coming back. He had 14 snaps, so he had 2 touchdowns. That's awesome. He only played 14 plays. Malik Washington, I would say benefits more for him his direct role. He only got 1 of the 9 targets after Tyreek Hill left the field. So that's why like the confidence isn't too high. But in terms of the screens, that's the really interesting thing in Miami, especially if they can't run the ball. And I think Tyreek Hill affects that a little bit and how he separates the field, giving them a little less space in this Miami running game. So they go to the screens, is what Mike McDaniel does. Last year, that was Achane and it was Jonnu Smith. Number 1 among running backs, number 1 among tight ends. This year, I was looking after 4 weeks and I couldn't find the screens. They were nowhere to be found. Tyreek Hill wasn't really getting them back. Waddle had 1. Achane was only at 3, which is really low for him. And Darren Waller didn't get any. And I looked up Malik Washington and he had 5, which was definitely the most on the team. So if that can increase, it can be beneficial in those PPR leagues. He's only running about 60% of routes right now, so that'll go up without Tyreek Hill. He's that main slot guy, very short targets. So hopefully in those PPR leagues, he can get enough volume where he can maybe be a flex matchup-dependent guy.
All right, number 5 here of our 6 points. Woody Marks. I drafted him. I'm feeling good. He had a big game off my bench last week. I'll be starting him this week. 2 touchdowns on the day in his breakout against the horrible Titans. But is he a league winner? Do you think, Joel, is Woody Marks a league winner?
I don't think league winner is what I would title him as. I think he's a solid start this week because of the matchup, and I think that's kind of how it'll be going forward. He has RB2 potential. The big thing for me is Houston's averaging 16 points per game right now. The offensive line is not the greatest. So last week, yeah, he had 58% of the touches, but that equaled 21 touches, and they won 26-0 against the Titans. So that's like, I think his best game of the season maybe is when he does get that Titans matchup and they'll play him again. So maybe he'll have the opportunity again down the line. I think his touches will increase in terms of that percentage, that 58, maybe it gets to 65 to 70%. So that can be good. He is first in fantasy points per touch. So he's been ultra efficient when he has gotten the ball this year. And it's not like a really low, like he had like 35 touches so far. So it's not nothing. But I think that he is definitely going to go as his offense does, and that's what scares me because where's my confidence level in terms of this Houston offense? It's not as great. So this week, he gets Baltimore. No Lamar Jackson helps that game script. Maybe they can get something going. Baltimore's 32nd against running backs. So I don't mind him at all this week, but I think there is going to be some weeks ahead where it's a little tough at times.
Yeah, I think that's very fair with him. I mean, personally, I'm hoping that he has some really good weeks where I'm able to flip him into something better at some point with Woody Marks. Otherwise, I think this Texans offense is just so bad. You're not going to feel a lot of confidence in touchdowns. You'll be hoping in fourth quarters and garbage time situations, run the ball, pass the ball to Marks. And I just don't like feeling that way in fantasy. I like being invested in the players that are ahead in the winning teams that score a lot week to week rather than some of these bad teams with players that you're just hoping for volume and garbage time points tallying up. On to number 6 here, Jameson Williams. He was a really good wide receiver last year for the Lions, 1,001 yards on 58 catches in 15 games last year. Through 4 games this year, only 214 yards on 10 catches. Is Jameson Williams a buy low, or are you avoiding him?
Kevin, this was actually the one that I was most excited to talk about. I would say he's a buy low for week 5, especially like if you're losing. I don't mind buying him right now because I think it'll get better. And that week 5 matchup against the Bengals is kind of the perfect spot to do it. Like I was talking about with A.J. Brown earlier, a lot of these times when they have these really rough games, I was like, all right, I need to go watch every single play and see what happened. And I went and watched his 8 targets this week. Here's how it went if I can brief you on these 8 targets. It was a completed hitch route, really short route. Goff got hit on what would have been a 50-yard touchdown in a post. There was a go route that was deep, that was slightly underthrown and dropped. It was a corner that went nowhere, another deep post that Goff got picked under pressure. It was another slot fade that could have gone for a touchdown, but it was a touched overthrown. It was a dropped crosser and then a 25-yard crosser over the middle. So it was all things where it wasn't like it was these deep contested catches going nowhere for the most of the time or not really valuable targets. It was all really, really close from being huge plays. And it's a little different in how they are using him. Last year, his average at the target was 12 yards downfield. That's probably like top 20% in terms of how long you're throwing downfield to a guy on average. They talked about how they do every single offseason, it seems like. Hey, we're going to use Jameson Williams as a more all-around receiver, use him in all different sort of ways. They've used him creatively downfield, but his average depth of target this year is not 12, it is 21. So they are not throwing it short to him at all. But instead of just running him on straight go routes every single time, they are using him very creatively downfield. So it is very interesting. He has those deep crossers. He has those fades out of the slot. He has lots of play action. He has those deep digs. Like a lot of really valuable targets here where I think on days where it does hit, it's going to hit big. And we look at this Bengals team, it's not looking too good. And the Lions, more than anybody, run up the score. I was playing Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think last 2 weeks ago against Chicago. And the score was like 38-14. And I'm like, Amon-Ra is like 20 fantasy points, but at least they're up by 24 now. They'll be done scoring. And then they have another touchdown to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then another touchdown to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, it's not even that they're running up the score, they're throwing up the score. So that's where it's like Jameson Williams against this Bengals matchup. I think the volume is still going to be there, and there's going to be tons of opportunity here against a team that is 6th worst against receivers, 6th worst against the outside, and they have that number 1 pass protection advantage. So against a Browns team where he basically missed out on 2 touchdowns because of the pressure, it's not going to be the same against Cincinnati, I would say.
I did notice that last week he had a league-high 210 air yards, which hits on your point about average depth of target for him this season. I think as soon as we get off this podcast, I'm going to try to trade for him because I could use a receiver.
I'm confident in this week. For this week, I love him.
All right, let's go for 2 here with our 6 points here with 2 more questions for you. Speaking about trade targets, who are some trade targets if you're an 0-4 team right now in fantasy football?
Yeah, first off, I'm sorry. Tough place to be, but there's still some hope. You got like a 15 to 20% playoff chance. A lot of it just comes down to the work. So there's been lots of injuries. How do we counter that? I would say the first group of players would be the guys that values are probably going to decrease. So you're buying them to win now. This would be your Jake Fergusons, your George Pickens, your Xavier Worthies. Will those still have value long term? It's not like you're trading a guy for 2 weeks. However, for these next 2-3 weeks, they're going to be really good, you're hoping for. So I like trading for them. I like trading for guys that maybe have that higher injury risk, which sounds a little backwards, but for guys that are 4-0, maybe trading away Chris Olave, J.K. Dobbins, and Keenan Allen, those type of players to these teams that are 0-4. Because Chris Olave, I don't necessarily love him long-term because he's just constantly hurt. There's lots going on. But for right now, he's producing really well. So I don't mind him if you're 0-4. Or good guys that are like a good chance of being at their best currently. J.K. Dobbins, another one, like doubling down that injury risk, but he's also maybe at his best right now as R.J. Harvey kind of comes on a little bit. Same with Travis Etienne, maybe Alvin Kamara, with those other running backs that maybe later on in the season they're taking more work.
All right, number 8. Who are some trade targets for the very fortunate and lucky and blessed 4-0 teams?
Yeah, I think you got to take advantage. This isn't the time where you coast. Like you kind of go foot to the pedal right here. So buying, if you're winning, a lot of it is those injured players. So we talked about Derrick Henry earlier. Maybe Bucky Irving falls on this, depending on how that comes out, like Lamar Jackson, Brock Bowers even, CeeDee Lamb, George Kittle, Rashee Rice, who's suspended. I think that is all great guys that long-term, they're going to be better than what they are right now when a lot of them aren't able to be played. The same thing with like bye weeks. Lots of week 5 bye weeks, some really good players like Josh Jacobs, Roma Dunze, Drake London. I think they're all solid trade targets. And then the last category is the ones where you're kind of banking on the talent. I don't want to be playing Brian Thomas Jr. right now. I don't want to be playing Ladd McConkey. Part of me doesn't even want to be playing Jamar Chase. But like those guys, A.J. Brown even maybe.
That's crazy.
4-0.
Those are three of the top 24 picks in every draft.
Yeah. So all of them, like, you can maybe buy Jamar Chase and hope they trade for a different quarterback. You can buy Brian Thomas and hope that he turns it around. You can buy Ladd McConkey and maybe Keenan Allen goes down to injury or has another hamstring.
McConkey is getting some targets. What is he? 7-8 targets a game for McConkey? He's still getting targets.
Yeah. He doesn't have a role that I love, but he is second in the NFL in routes run. Still getting targets. He's had some drops. So it's not like he's just not playing or not being used at all. There's still some hope there. So that's the guys where it's like, yeah, you don't love playing him in week 5, but they're a round 2 pick. Maybe they turn it around, and then you have a round 2 pick in the fantasy playoffs. And that's kind of the focus here. Not that we're playing for the fantasy playoffs yet, but we're playing for the second half of the season, I would say.
If you're a team in a league with it, let's just say, you're seeing the news this morning, Dylan Gabriel named starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, he's just a rookie. Big questions there. If you're in a league where, like, let's just say Isaiah Bond, who is a popular wide receiver waiver pickup this week, and he's still sitting on waivers, are you going after him if you're 4-0 or 0-4 as an upside guy, or is the Dylan Gabriel news making you just avoid entirely Isaiah Bond as an example?
I don't know if I would necessarily put it as like a 4-0 or 0-4 decision. It just kind of depends on your bench. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't start him this week. I don't like maybe Judkins, maybe, but I cannot confidently start any Brown this week. Dylan Gabriel, I think it's cruel that they make his first start against Brian Flores, like specifically against young quarterbacks. Like, it's just usually not a recipe for success. So I actually did pick up Isaiah Bond in my main league, which is a dynasty league. So I like him for like dynasty. He's been getting targets. Cedric Tillman is now on IR, so that playing time will get another bump. But for week 5, wouldn't start him. Long-term stash, I don't mind it. I think there's some potential there. And the Browns have been known to go very pass-heavy at times. So if they do have a situation where it is somewhat efficient, maybe average, that volume can be very valuable.
In my number one league with my high school friends, I'm 1-3 with the second most points in the league.
Happens.
In 8th place, 8 playoff teams. So I still, there's a lot of teams that make the playoffs in our league. And I picked up Bond and Brashard Smyth. So 2 kind of swings to have on my bench. Young swings hoping for an increased role over the course of the season. And Keandre Miller, too. I kind of went 3 for 3 with my hopes and waivers this week, spending some of that waiver money. But ultimately, I mean, I think for some of these teams, like some of these 0-4 teams, like I've, different type of league. I'm 1-3, 8 playoff teams. Most leagues, I don't think have 8 playoff teams. That's a lot. But for these teams, it is the type of thing where you got to make moves. Like in my league, I think a lot of people are hesitant to make moves. They just kind of sit on their teams that they draft. It's a very low activity league when it comes to trades. But if you're in a league where people love to trade, like you got to take swings, man. You have to, and you have to invest in the now. Because what is the average league, Joel? Like 4 teams make the playoffs, you'd say? Or 6 teams make the playoffs?
I really like 6.
8.
My ideal is 12-team leagues and 6 make the playoffs. That's what I'd say is my favorite.
8 is a lot. Like that's ridiculous. It feels like the training wheels are on in my league. It's ridiculous. And it's PPR. PPR, this is my first time playing full PPR. PPR just feels fake to me. It's too much. Half PPR is the way, in my opinion. That's just, is what it is.
Yeah, my league is the opposite in terms of trades. They will trade just because they're bored. I don't even know if they're trying to be productive at some points. They just want to have fun, and they'll just make trades because they have nothing to do that day. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, but it's fun.
That's my type of league, but is what it is. Joel, thank you so much for joining me today, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Loved it.